Ooh, 37.
Oh, fuck.
Okay, let's start over. Hang on.
47.
No. I'm restarting my recording.
Oh, god damn it. Coward. My recording only grows stronger.
Okay, now you can call it time.
4.
I didn't think you were going to seriously call a non-5 number.
No,
So
A non-multiple of.
It's,
Were you suddenly questioning your math?
yeah, honestly.
4 plus 5?
No, not for that one, but 7 plus 5. I was like, wait, are we really doing this? I know the answer to that, but if I'm wrong,
Then it is plainly obvious.
all right. So what's our flow going to be? Do we want to go right into the serious stuff? Do we want to do a lighter discussion and then talk about the serious stuff?
So I'm wondering if the thing that we can certainly go through every single dot on the serious stuff, but I wonder if it would make sense to say, lots of serious stuff continues to happen in the games industry. We're there for the victims, and our hearts go out to everyone affected by this bad stuff. In particular, there have been incidences of I don't know that we need to really go through every step on the Evo Online thing. We can if you guys want to, but I'm wondering.
I think that's like a really fascinating and big one, and I think there's stuff to talk about, like in terms of if COVID wasn't happening, what would this have ended up looking like? And maybe none of this happens if COVID isn't happening, because if there's like a perfect storm of all this shit going together,
it's worth contrasting and comparing how rapidly it deteriorated and happened versus a lot of other industries and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's
we don't have to go through every single thing, but I think if you
guys want to,
allegations came out.
I think we should probably.
And,
I think we should probably skip games, talk about that stuff, see where we're at time wise, and then if we have time to talk about games, we can talk about games. Is my thinking, because I think we'll probably talk for an hour or two about the serious stuff if we want to go in detail.
I don't know if I have that in me, but I think the Evo thing is a big
sure.
We can point to wow, this happened real fast, and
I had to update that particular block of shit 4 or 5 times within 3 hours.
Yeah,
maybe it'll go faster than I'm thinking too. That's fine too.
Yeah. The only thing I really want to talk about is the IOX-2 because it was cool. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I'm open to whatever.
And honestly, I have very little idea of what happened this week. I have not been able to keep up with anything just because of what I saw Andy stepping down the Crucible. Yep. I saw the good news and the general gist of what was happening with the serious stuff. But,
the good news of Amazon's Crucible.
The less serious news. The good news of J.K. Rowling being.
I was going to say, I think half of the less serious news is also really depressing and upsetting.
Yeah.
So
these are the
definitely
standards.
A doom scroll for me this week.
Yeah. This is God. Okay.
Have you guys seen the meme that's it's like a boomer meme, then it's the cartoon of the guy standing next to a grill, and it says Black Lives Matter protests and coronavirus and I just want a grill, and it's a shitty boomer thing for people to send around.
Wow, no, I have not. That sounds perfect.
Ironically, because obviously I don't agree with that sentiment, but ironically, that's what my friends and I have started saying whenever there's horrible shit that comes up. It's just I just want a grill.
Is it a picture of Hank Hill?
The difference is not because it's not that I don't want people to talk about it. It's just I want this bad stuff to stop happening.
Oh yeah. Dad, what if someone wants their steak something other than medium rare? Then you politely but firmly ask them to leave.
Oh, it's a good show.
Yeah. Okay. Hello and welcome to Gaming Fix, episode 128 on July 4th, 2020. It's still 2020, everybody. Can you believe it? I'm your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite way to beat Dark Souls. I'm joined today by Alex.
I would use whey protein.
And also joining me, Pat.
I want to defeat Dark Souls while on the back of a T-Rex, which is using a DDR pad.
Okay. The T-Rex is using the DDR pad?
Yeah.
Is this a standard size DDR pad, or is this a T-Rex like to scale DDR pad?
I think it has to be a T-Rex. What I like is that you asked if the DDR pad was to scale with the T-Rex or if the T-Rex was full-sized or...
Well, if you're on the back of it, like...
I think I could ride on a small T-Rex's back too.
Like the size of a pony, like...
Sure, but this is a real full-size T-Rex and a giant DDR pad. That's why you need the T-Rex to use it, because it's too large for you to use it as a human.
And then you can use the Donkey Konga drums on the back to attack.
Exactly.
And movement is controlled by the dinosaur. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay,
and I just drift with the dinosaur so that it knows what needs to happen.
Yeah. You touch ponytails with the dinosaur.
Yes,
Wait, sorry,
exactly. Yes.
You mean drift in the Pacific Rim sense, not
Correct.
in the Tokyo drift sense,
I
right?
would also accept Tokyo drifting with dinosaurs. I have yet to find a dinosaur in Ark whose special ability is to Tokyo drift.
Fuck, that would be so cool.
It would be cool, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's in there.
What's the
I wonder
fastest?
if you know what they do in Tokyo.
What's the fastest dinosaur?
At least in Ark, it is a Gallimimus, I believe.
Do you think a Gallimimus could drift?
No.
Did I tell you about the time it was like my last day of training for my job, and we were celebrating, but we went out like karaoke, got drunk, all that fun stuff, and then somehow ended up talking to some dude standing by a skyline on the streets of the city, and then I was like, "Oh, have you seen Tokyo Drift?" in like really bad Japanese, and then
really
I got a guy's phone number. I'm like, "You have to take me drifting."
Oh my god!
And then I moved out of that city. Like,
oh man, that's
after.
such a sad ending to that story. I wish you could say. And then we had a beautiful night of drifting.
Do you still have his number?
I don't know.
You just have to ride in the car and scream as ignorant as possible. You have to yell "Ridge Racer" every time he goes around a drift.
I don't.
What would you have put it in your phone?
Maybe I do. I don't. I have a random person named Maruyama in my phone.
Oh.
It's in Japanese.
You need to message them and say, "Do you own a Skyline?"
I don't think it was their car, but this person I was with was trying to hit on this girl in the street, and I'm like, his Japanese worse than mine. I'm like, I'm sorry, he's drunk, he's an idiot. And then she ran over to her boyfriend, who I think was the owner of the Skyline. And I started talking to someone else who was like one of his friends.
That's really good.
Yeah. First week in Japan, baby.
So we'll get back to this mixed connection next week and hear all about it.
Yeah, I'll call Maruyama up and be like, "Hey, summer vacation's coming up. Do you still drift?"
It's too bad we're
Hell
God.
Oh no, what have you done?
Oh god. Sorry, I clicked on a thing that had sound, and
oh, that's okay.
It was very loud. It didn't do anything to my recording, just my ears.
We can always hope. Well, after my story about Maruyama, it had to have a sad ending so we can gently transition into just absolute shit show that continues to happen in the gaming industry, with more just terrible stories and news coming out. Sorry to bring everyone down like this, but we want to make sure to touch on some of this stuff and just say we continue to stand with the victims of abuse and sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse that have been coming forward with their stories. in the games industry and wrestling in general, everyone. And yeah, just a lot of stories this week.
The past few weeks, well, in a year which has sucked major ass, the past few weeks in particular have been particularly suck ass.
You know, I don't want to like yuck anyone's yums. Some people go for a nice suck ass. This is a very much a doo-doo ass situation. So
yeah, and I think some of the, I mean, it is, we've talked about at length how horrible and horrifying police brutality in America is, and you know, there's no, that still continues. It doesn't, it's going on. You should still be paying attention to that. But to some extent, like there were such visible, the way people have sort of taken to the streets to protest and stuff has made it feel like a lot of that stuff is that like there's people who are en masse coming out to say, we don't accept this and we're not going to put up with this. And so there's a weird bit of hope, I guess, that like is very visible on a larger scale. And I think some of the, so I mean, I'm certainly not comparing the like impact of these two different things, but when it comes to the assault allegations and the emotional abuse allegations and all of the stuff that's happening within games, while I still am hopeful that there will be elements of change that come out of this round of accusations, I think it's harder for me to take that sort of like, it's harder for me to find elements of this inspirational because I feel like it just keeps happening again and again and again and again and again, and it doesn't get better. And so it's like looking at this time, it's like, well, I hope it gets better this time. It didn't really the last time, clearly. So,
well,
it's tough.
We are at least we're seeing some actual consequences. Maybe we're seeing action being taken. We're seeing some consequences. We're seeing action being taken. And like, you know, so there, it's not just like small things like, oh, we're sorry, we stand with the victims of abuse. They're actually having to reckon with some consequences. The big one this week was a lot of stories coming about the fighting game community, especially around Evo Online was supposed to be beginning this week as part of their like, oh, COVID-19 can't have an in-person thing in Las Vegas, so we're gonna do an online thing over multiple weeks. That was supposed to start today, and it will not be happening at all because numerous members of the fighting game community, as well as the president and co-founder of Evo, Joey Queller, Mr. Wiz, had some allegations thrown at him, and it's pretty serious. But he has been put on he was put on administrative leave and then removed from the company like within hours of each other, right? But before that, like as the allegations came out, numerous companies and individual players started pulling out, saying they were not going to be participating. Sonic Fox was a major one of like individual players.
He was one of the first, as far as I recall.
Or they were one of the first, rather. And NetherRealm Studios pulled Mortal Kombat 11 and said they were not participating. Capcom pulled Street Fighter 5. Bandai Namco also pulled their games from the event, and I can't remember the name of the developer, but new fighting game Them's Fightin' Herds was also pulled. And then Mr. Wiz was removed from the company, and the event was canceled. And but Evo, part of Evo's like the profits or the proceeds were going to be donated to, I think, was it COVID relief?
Probably. I mean, I'm sure there was
that would make sense.
Yeah.
They're still donating like an equivalent amount to those, even though they're having to refund people for canceling the event and all that stuff. It is a lot. It happened real fast. Wow.
Yeah.
It was interesting to watch in one sense. Like again, much like all the previous stuff, I'm not glad it happened, of course, because the fact that, any of these reasons came up in the first place is awful.
Yeah.
However, I was glad to see such swift movement. Like,
Yes.
like companies, like big companies, which are usually glacial to respond to anything, reacted within an hour or less.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, like, I think I ended up updating our story in our document 4 or 5 times within about 3 hours, because it went from Sonic Fox dropping to NetherRealms dropping to all this stuff all within about 3 hours.
Yeah, and I think it's because they recognized that they kind of had to move quickly, because fighting games are so much about like the community around them, that if you don't move really fast on this stuff, it could basically just make the whole bottom fall out of the genre.
The community, these big in-person events, if people don't feel safe there, the
fighting game community has had problems with this kind of stuff. Like, I mean, obviously it's had problems with abuse also for a long time, but more openly, it's been a very hostile space for basically anyone who isn't a straight dude for a long time.
That's a huge point. It's the FGC is notably toxic.
Yeah. And it's getting better, I think, is my interpretation. Sonic Fox is a really great example of a person who is like pushing boundaries in terms of inclusivity and trying to build a more diverse and welcoming FGC. But
it is one of the most, it is an incredibly diverse community in terms of players. Like, you look at something like MOBAs, Dota, League. I might be wrong on this now, but those are usually, it's a lot of white people and like Chinese, Korean, not so many Japanese. There's been some reasons where Japanese people can't like participate in those games because of gambling laws here.
Sure.
But the fighting game community has people from all over, all walks
really
of
diverse.
life.
But if you're a woman trying to play fighting games,
not many women,
you are in for really and like the way that a lot of and again, I don't mean to paint with a broad brush, because I think there's a wide range of different fighting game communities within the fighting game community. But I can remember when I was starting to try to like get into going to some local tournaments, the way that people talked about even female characters in fighting games was awful. Like, it was just disgusting, the kind of stuff that people would say. And let alone if you were just like actually a woman trying to get in and play games.
Yeah. So it should be noted, there's an article that came out by Frankie Ward probably 3 or 4 days ago on PC Gamer called "On Being a Woman in Esports," which is very much worth a read if you have the time.
There was an article, I can't remember who wrote it. It was like a few years ago, but it was about a woman trying to get into her local Marvel versus Capcom scene, I think. And I think it was like Marvel versus Capcom like 3, and just like her experience like trying to get good and going to tournaments and just being treated like shit. And I think people assuming like, oh, where's your boyfriend? Like, you're obviously here to support him. She's like, no, I'm here to play.
And I think it's been frustrating for me for a long time to look at those communities. And this is true of other esports, like MOBA communities and RTS communities and stuff too. But to look at those communities and you see people talk about how great the fighting game community is and how it's such a warm place where it's people are like family, not just friends and stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, unless you're a woman, and then it sucks. So can we address that and stop like harping on how great it is until we start to address some of this toxicity? And so I think I'm hopeful that in this case, it's a clear showing of support for people. And will lead to more inclusivity.
I wonder how long it'll take for some of that stuff to like actually like bear fruit and see more women in like top 8s and stuff like that.
And if it will at all is sort of the concern that I have, because like, you can say, I think a company like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, despite that some gross mishandling of response or lack of response to things like the Black Lives Matter movement currently happening, I think Valve is generally a company that is like not full of misogynists. I mean, knowing of the people who work there, there's a lot of really good people who work there. But at the same time, the community that plays Dota is really toxic. And so it doesn't really matter what Valve says or does in a lot of ways, because the community is super toxic. And I mean, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. They have the ability to influence that community, but they don't necessarily pull all the levers that they could. And I worry that these companies maybe won't take those steps either, but this is a good step to take in any case. So hopefully it's an exemplary of like further action in the future to try to make those communities safer places for people.
And
it's Alex, go ahead.
Weirdly, one of the communities that seems to be the most inclusive in that sense, especially with having top tier women players, is Call of Duty, which is surprising to me that that's the one more so than like the fighting game or the MOBA community. Like you do have some, like Scarlet was a StarCraft 2 player who did really well, but like
Scarlet also got incessantly picked on and harassed.
But like, so like you can point to a few, but you're completely correct in that, like, especially Dota and stuff like that. Like I feel like people feel intimidated because of the community and the toxicity surrounding it.
I will say, from the little bit that I have, I forget the name of the woman. There's Call of Duty. One of the key community leaders at Infinity Ward is a take no shit woman who is like, fuck you. This is not a the toxic elements of this community are not welcome. Me as a representative of the company is saying you are not welcome. And she's really cool. And they I think almost every game studio could do a better job of fighting toxicity, but I think that they are trying to do it at some level, at least. And there's an earnest desire to do that within Infinity Ward. Which, you know, Call of Duty now means like 4 different developers as the leads, and then dozens of smaller teams.
What is the esports scene for Call of Duty even like?
It's Call of Duty League. This year was their big year to like make it huge, and then everything happened. But they have it's actually quite cool. Like they have city-based teams. I hope it comes back next year and has another shot.
Activision is all about that, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, I like it. I think it's cool. Like we have the Seattle Surge here, which we're not very good, but like the idea was each weekend, a different city would host the games, so you could buy a ticket for a weekend of going to watch them play. I was actually planning on going. It was going to be last month, the Seattle weekend, and they cover it on ESPN and stuff, and it's pretty fun to watch. You have to kind of learn more about the game than you do for Overwatch, I think, to make it interesting. But it's got a scene for sure. It's just that.
No, I mean, Call of Duty is popular. I have no idea what that esports scene looks like, because
you can play in Modern Warfare. You can actually play a playlist that's like the pro rules, where it limits the weapon pool and limits the maps and puts it on hardcore mode.
That's where you lose me. Like, if you want to play the game, play the fucking game. It's the same thing with Smash. No items. If you're going to play the game, play the fucking game.
Well, I can tell you, having 2 or 3 beers and goofing around on my computer, I do not want to play Modern Warfare the way the pros play it. So I like the separation.
It's they just, like, I don't know. You can do like the hardcore competitive shit, but it should be all the same and just be like, okay, here's the ranked. I'm going to take this seriously. And if you're gonna be like, oh, this gun's broken or it's poorly balanced, fuck off. That's the game, baby. But anyway,
I think that's a different conversation entirely that we can have sometime.
Yeah, no, it's
about Modern Warfare.
All items. I'm willing to admit high high spawn rates on all items. It's a little much in Smash Bros. Ultimate, but all items is the way to play.
Final destination.
Speaking of Smash Bros, actually, I did not mean to do this pivot or segue, but holy shit.
Yeah.
There's just a lot came out about the Smash Bros scene, in particular in the fighting game stuff.
Yeah, and I would say too much for us to cover in this episode.
Oh yeah.
100%. I have not been able to follow things this week. I just saw like in the kind of like, okay, the Smash community is kind of having a culling of sorts. And then I looked at this list that Alex has in this document, and it's just so long, so many players named.
I think it's an interesting contrast to, not to take away from the actual human pain that's happening right now in that community, but I'm not familiar. I mean, it's such a long list. I'm not familiar enough with each person to really speak to the individual experiences, but I mean, has Nintendo even said anything about this?
Nintendo did make a statement.
Okay.
It was like pretty toothless, but one of the people who was accused, Nairo, he had like a featured, or he had been like interviewed and had a video on Nintendo's YouTube, and they removed that. So like they are paying attention, they're acting and responding, but it's a little like, oh, we stand with we don't stand for abuse and violence towards people.
It's just an interesting, like, I feel it shows an interesting contrast. I think like you look at a company like NetherRealm, and I feel like with the way they run events, even separate from events like Evo, they seem really, really involved in their community, and it seems like they're like actively like, hey, we're doing a community event, and at this community event, we're going to reveal new characters and stuff like that. Whereas Nintendo just awful. Is so hands off with the Smash community, and it's like
all communities.
Yeah, for sure. But the Smash community seems like the one that really needs the moderation, I guess. And I wonder how long we're going to keep giving a company like Nintendo a pass for this kind of stuff. If we want to see these communities be better moderated and better, like, safer spaces for people.
Nintendo is famously hands off with the Smash stuff. Like they're like, Smash esports, we don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And
I think that is kind of, I don't know if it is Nintendo's responsibility especially for these kinds of homegrown communities, like
I don't know
the
either.
Smash community, like, they aren't overseeing the community in much the same way like the Street Fighter team is overseeing. Like, they aren't organizing the tournaments necessarily most of the time.
They are more now than they ever were with like Melee and stuff. They are still pretty like, here's a patch, figure out what it is.
Yeah,
figure out what we did.
They have less of a responsibility to directly moderate that community, but I will say they certainly are thrilled for people to buy Nintendo stuff. And if it just so happens that the company that is buying one of your most popular, the community that is like sort of the most passionate about one of your biggest games has a lot of awful elements in it. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think they should be like kicking down the door on people's hotel room tournaments and saying like, you can't do this. But I think silence is definitely complicity, and I really would love to see them take a more active stance in speaking out against this, not necessarily the specific individuals, because it's not their call necessarily, but to speak out in general about the conditions in that space.
Here's what they said to IGN. At Nintendo, we are deeply disturbed by the allegations raised against certain members of the competitive gaming community. They're absolutely impermissible. We want to make it clear that we condemn all acts of violence, harassment, and exploitation against anyone, and that we stand with the victims.
Yeah.
So they don't even like say like within our community or the Smash Bros community. They're just like competitive gaming.
A big part and I won't keep hogging the mic on it, but a big part of 2020 for me in general, and I think that you guys have probably seen it in some degrees in the way that I talk in our private chats, but I'm really fucking tired of the pearl clutching, man. Like, say the Smash community has a lot of toxic elements and we need to address this. Like we need to get over the way as a global society we dance around these words and we dance around specifics. Like we got to get better about the language that we use for this stuff.
I wonder how much of it is having hands tied by the Japanese corporate overlords.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like, fuck those people if they're saying that you can't say the thing you should be supposed to say. And it's getting really frustrating to see just the ways in which we continue to try to like push like civility is even the wrong word. It's just like the way that like communication isn't evolving with the horrific problems that we're facing as a global human society. And it's really, really frustrating to watch. And because companies are afraid, because companies' marketing departments are afraid of losing some sales, companies aren't willing to say and address the specific things that they should be doing.
I think to that extent, especially you're seeing it in the gaming industry, and it's been kind of touching on what you were just talking about, is the fact that it's just a lot of words right now. You're not seeing that many actions. Like talk is cheap. The real change you will see is when people start making things happen. And like, that's kind of what I was getting at before, where I was like, I'm not glad that it had to happen in that we got here, but the fact that Evo shut itself down so fast is a good thing, because that's an action, and that is is actionable items that we're seeing. That's like, nope, we're not tolerating this bullshit. And you're seeing it within Smash too. Like, it's not an event being canceled. You're seeing like the entire community kind of collapsing in on itself. And but they're also self-auditing. They're saying like, okay, we're taking the time to really analyze all of this and say, how are we going to change this? Rather than just saying, this sucks.
Yeah, I have seen some folks with like some, I'd say like questionable takes right now, where it's like, now Nintendo's never going to support our community. Like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, why should they?
Like,
well, that's a direct consequence of your actions then, friend.
Yeah. And I think a thing that is true, and I don't have I have thankfully not been in communities that I know of where this kind of stuff is happening to the degree that it's happening in the Smash community. But as someone who's really into tabletop games have famously as a community had a problem being a welcoming space for a more diverse range of people. Like most tabletop gamers are cis straight white men for sure. And that's especially true when you look at games like, Warhammer and
Magic.
Or Magic. Yeah. Magic is a little more diverse ethnically, at least, but certainly it is.
Get them Yu-Gi-Oh cards, baby.
It is a male dominated kind of space. And I can say as a member of that community that if anyone says in the Smash community who's active in the Smash community that it's not their fault because they're not a harasser or whatever, and they're not friends with the harassers, you still can have an impact on your community. Like, you can be I try my best, and I probably could always be doing better too in my local tabletop community to be a really active voice for, hey, we don't really have any women playing this game, and maybe it's a lack of interest, but we really should try to make sure we're a welcoming space whenever people who are not like just like all of us are interested in playing these games. And you need to be active in that way in those communities that you participate in to try to push for diversity, whether it's whatever kind of diversity it is, and making it a safe space. That's an active thing that you have to constantly do. Just not being a bad person isn't good enough.
There's that. There is opening the door, but there's also keeping the house clean.
Yep.
Like, if you're seeing bullshit in your community, don't just laugh at it or 100%. Set it aside. Just like call it out and like, eschew those people if needed.
Yep. And that is exactly part of the same coin is you also have to call it out when you see people behaving in a shitty way. If I hear someone make a shitty joke or there was a time when there was a player in our community for one of the games I play who used the R word, and I was like, okay, stop now. We're not using that word. And it was a thing, but you have to address that stuff when it comes up and when you see it. And you have you have a responsibility, I think, to do that.
Yeah. And to step back into the Smash stuff, like, we're definitely not going to talk about all of it, but it is profoundly shitty. And if our listeners want to listen, read about it, I am going to put the link that Andre mentioned in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yes, just so many. My God.
It's fucking intense. Like, I don't even know how to approach it. So
yeah,
I don't think we're the people to do it.
No. Further going down this road of shitty things.
Oh, God.
I mean, this is kind of continuing on from like the previous week, where a bunch of stuff came out about Ubisoft, various people there. And Ubisoft has suspended a number of employees accused of misconduct and abuse, including a few top executives. I was not able to follow the story this week. I don't know what happened. Can either of you illuminate this for me and our listeners?
It's very much what we were seeing last week. It was people in positions of power abusing that power and doing some real hot bullshit. Like, you had
the same with these two executives.
Yes, and Andy Benahi was named among those who was who.
Well,
oh, sorry, go for it.
These weren't both. I kind of admittedly did not pay as close attention to the Ubisoft stuff because at a certain point it was just so clear that company is such a hive that I sort of checked out in a way that I shouldn't have. But like Maxime Bellon was like not necessarily a case of, was more like workplace, like emotional abuse. I thought like some of these cases were more like that. No. Okay.
Maxime
then
was,
I don't know.
Sexual harassment and assault.
Okay. Well, there you go. At a certain point, I wonder where you have to start saying things like, fuck Ubisoft, I'm done. Assassin's Creed looks cool, but not until I hear things get better. A lot of people who
work at Ubisoft.
I know, yeah, that's the tough part, right?
Yeah, they've been taking action. Like the creative director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla left. I don't know if he was booted or he was like, all right, I'm resigning.
I think he resigned.
Yeah, Ashmi, or sorry.
Ishmael?
I can't remember his first name now, but it's Ash.
I don't remember.
Ashraf?
Yeah, I always knew him as Ash. So
yeah.
Sorry, to step back to give context to Bellon in particular. Bellon's departure, described as a quote resignation, follows a stream of allegations posted on social media accusing the Ubisoft executive of choking a female employee at a Far Cry party and several forms of sexual harassment.
Like,
so
okay,
yeah.
So it's fucked up. And to that extent,
maybe we should put a content warning on the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah,
just to say hey, the beginning we talk about some shit.
Yeah,
but
I think it is an interesting's the wrong word, but a difficult line to walk of, do you support Ubisoft? Because on one hand, this stuff has been happening behind the scenes for a very long time and been protected by Ubisoft.
Yeah.
But also they are doing stuff about it. So it's,
yeah,
for me, it's a wait and see.
Because they got caught.
Right. That's the thing. And that's what I'm so...
Is it that they got caught though? Because like, kind of like we were talking about last week, I think it was not the original, the first people who came out and were very open about the abuse they went through and actually putting names to it, which kind of caused a surge of others to do the same.
So I think they're not, like, certain things like lower level employees and like the positions of power stuff, but like choking a woman at a Far Cry party is like, as an executive, is like,
I mean, he should go to jail. Like, yes. let's be clear.
Oh yeah. There's no argument. No argument.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. We agree. And I guess that's one of the things that I'm really struggling with right now in my own response to these things, is what is the right call, like, should we even be talking about, Hyperscape later in the show, given all of the shit that's happening and coming out from Ubisoft about all of this awful stuff? Like, it's not necessarily the team that made Hyperscape's fault, but at the same time, at what point do we start saying, like, these companies need to not only show action right now, but then maintain the kind of conduct that is, like, appropriate? And then you look at it and go, well, maybe now it feels good to talk about their products again. Like, I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Well, it feels to me very similar to what you were saying about the Smash community or the fighting game community, who were saying, I didn't do that. I didn't even see it happening. But what should they do? Like,
Yeah,
and it's very much the same way. It's very analogous to, I'm sure there are Ubisoft studios somewhere where none of this was happening. And they're looking at this like, fuck, we didn't want this. We never, like, we actively fight against this. But now, our parent company is drowning in it. What do we do? Yeah. And I think we have to see how they act.
Part of me wonders is with how awful all of this, how pervasive all this stuff is like, is there a Ubisoft studio somewhere where this isn't happening?
I have no idea.
Can we say? I mean, I don't mean
they employ like 16,000 people. So
no, I'm not even necessarily just trying to target Ubisoft, but it's clear that this stuff is happening at companies everywhere. Yeah. And is it safe to even think there's anywhere that's safe in some ways? And that's sort of where I get really bummed. Like, well, obviously I get upset about it way before that, but that's where it gets hard for me to kind of see the, like, maybe things will change, because it just seems like it's so pervasive and it's so everywhere. Like, it's hard to even come up with an example of a place that really is trying to do it right, I guess.
And it's fucked up because it's not new. We were seeing these kinds of stories 2 years ago. I mean, like, to an extent, like, we have the Zoe Quinn stuff from many years ago, which was very much the same thing. A year ago, we had the Alec Holowka stuff leading up to his suicide. Like, all this kind of stuff you're seeing in the games industry is just kind of power struggles and people being abusive towards one another. And the solution can't be easy, but it has to happen, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because obviously it keeps happening.
And I think that's where a lot of where I get, like, part of where I have a hard time, like, talking about it in a level-headed way, is that I just don't even know I don't know what the answer is to really fight this stuff. Like, yes, firing people is good. It just doesn't feel like enough. It doesn't feel like there's enough happening, even in the wake of all this, to me, to really combat this horrible shit. And, like, I think that, like, people, it extends down to, like, people who play games. If you hear stories like someone being choked at a Far Cry party and your response isn't complete disgust, you are part of the problem too. And, like, you need to sit with the way that you look at this stuff, because I see in comment threads a lot of, like, well, I guess this is going to take over the conversation for a month and I just want to play games. And it's like, that mentality was part of the thing that allows this stuff to keep happening too. And it's just so frustrating.
Well, the video game community is very good at dehumanizing. That is something that they've become experts at, is, taking away the human elements and the people who are actually, on the other side of all of these, everything.
Yeah.
Like, you've seen it with all of this, like you've said, seeing comment threads being like, oh, well, I guess this is going to take over the conversation. Or, like, even the thing that's been going on the past couple days is people getting extremely angry at Laura Bailey for playing a character who is a woman who is muscular. And it's just
real fucking stupid.
I don't understand how people can forget.
The discourse is so dumb.
Or actively ignore the humans.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Again, I don't know the solution either.
Yeah. Well, It sounds like, according to you, Alex, Jim Sterling put out a video about kind of the current state of things in the gaming scene.
Yeah, I will admit, I'm not a huge Jim Sterling fan in general. Jimquisition is something I've watched from time to time. Usually I don't know. He's had some things in his past which I've not agreed with, obviously.
Yeah, same.
But the thing is, in his video, is he makes a point to call those out about himself, which
That's
I
good.
thought was really good. He's like, looking back, he says, yeah, I have people who tell me all the time that they can't watch my content because they don't support the things I did these many years ago. And yes, I feel terrible and shitty about them. And they have every right to hold those criticisms against me, but I'm working to be a better person. Like, that's something he basically says in his video. And he gets extremely livid over like the women who've had to go through just absolute atrocities just to be a part of the industry.
Yeah.
And it's a very good video.
That's good.
I'm not usually a huge fan of Jim Sterling, but like, I think that video is 100% worth the time.
That's good to hear. I've pretty much exactly the same feelings on that channel. I think in that vein too, I would say it's worth, I have criticisms, but I'm not going to get into those. I would say it's worth listening to Kind of Funny's Let's Talk About Everything episode of, I believe it's the Kind of Funny podcast. At the very least, Greg goes into really great detail about like specific issues that he has had, not necessarily relating to this topic 100%, but just generally issues of like ignorance and saying things that aren't right to say and stuff like that. And I think it's good to hear people in prominent positions within games media, you know, like Jim Sterling, like Greg Miller, talk about mistakes that they have made in the past and, you know, the ways in which they work to get better. Because I think there's a lot of people who don't even realize the stuff that they say sucks sometimes.
Sure.
Probably myself included. I mean, I'm sure that I say things from time to time that are not cool. And so I think like hearing that people talk about that stuff is a huge step in the right direction more broadly to make games more inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That is gonna do it for the abuse allegation section of the podcast, I guess. Last thing. Oh yeah, no, it's a hot transition right there, baby.
No, I'm just upset that this is not the first time we've had this fucking section in the past month.
It won't be the last time
in general on this podcast.
I don't think it's going to be the last time either.
A last bit of serious news is Twitch streamer Byron Reckful Bernstein, known for his WoW streams and Hearthstone, passed away. It seems to be suicide. I don't know if it was ever confirmed, but the talk around it has been that it was suicide. It seems there have been a few suicides recently in the streaming community. Yeah. And it sucks, man.
Yeah. One positive thing which has come out of it, I mean, I don't want to make any light of it at all.
Yeah.
Because it's awful. But it has prompted some very open discussions about mental health and depression, and how it is not a bad thing to seek counsel if you're feeling extremely depressed or anything like that. To potentially normalize it and say it's okay to do so. I think there's a lot of people who point to suicide hotlines. They will, send tweets or send messages with access to those numbers. But to those who go through severe depression, like I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder many years ago, so still a thing I deal with, is that you don't want to call those. If you're in that state, the last thing you want to do is call that number. So it can be fairly empty. And I really hope, I'm sad that Byron had to go through that and probably felt as though he couldn't talk with anyone about it. But if anyone is going through that, or you potentially know anyone who could be going through that, get in touch with someone, like just someone you know. Like if it's you that is being affected, just reach out to anyone you care about. Just, doesn't have to be about depression. It can just be a quick chat, just conversation.
I think it's so important for everyone, but especially if you are someone who is, privileged enough to not have depression or to be or who's not as prone to depression. Make sure you educate yourself on the ways to talk about that with people and the ways to help people, because it can be really, really scary when someone tells you that they're feeling that way. But there's certain things that you should not say in response and not do in response. And it's really, really helpful to learn about that stuff and to understand that even if you feel that you have perfect mental health, you should still learn about mental health concerns, because it could be it can be as powerful as learning CPR and stuff like that. So, and then, also to kind of echo what Alex said, just talk to the people that, even if you don't think that there's someone who could be going through some stuff. Checking in with friends, doing wellness checks and stuff is really important, especially right now, because it feels like the end of the fucking world. And if you're someone who lives with depression, right now can feel crushing. I think it does for a lot of us either way. But definitely talk to people that, just check in and say hi if you haven't talked to somebody in a little bit. And I think, you can be open and honest too about checking in with people because you're concerned about your friends. The worst thing that's going to happen is someone is going to go, that's weird of you. I'm not depressed. It's fine.
Just don't ask them how they're doing. Just don't ask them how they're doing. Just nobody wants to answer that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting question at this point, because I was talking about this with my best friend here who is from China, and she says in China, no one ever asks that because you don't know how to answer. You don't know how to be honest about how are you doing? Well, things are extremely fucked up and I'm just not handling it well. That doesn't, that's not a good start to a conversation. It's better to have
conversations about that with my girlfriend.
And sometimes it's hard. I have one of my very close friends. We hadn't talked in a little bit, and the stuff that came up when she was asking how I was doing was all negative stuff, and I'm generally doing really well in the face of all of this horrible stuff from a personal mental health perspective. And so, but we hadn't talked in a bit, and it just so happened that I was like, well, X, Y, and Z are really frustrating me right now on a personal level. And, her response was like, do you have a therapist? And it's like, we don't need to, I'm the kind of person that I'm not going to get offended at that question. But at the same time, it's also okay to just have some things that are bothering you. It doesn't always have to be a jump. You shouldn't, this is what I mean when I say learn about how to help and talk to people that are going through stuff. Just learn to be more empathetic, because if someone tells you, oh, I'm really having a hard time because I really want to get out and go hiking, and I'm really, really frustrated because I feel cooped up, blah, 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 whatever. You don't necessarily have to jump to, are you in crisis? So it's kind of just at on an interpersonal level. I think learning about how to identify stuff in your friends and speak to it is really helpful, so that it doesn't make people feel worse, and it does, and you can be a force for positivity in people's lives.
Yep. It's a real hard time out there right now. You've got someone you can talk to. You don't even it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm going to dump all my problems on them. It doesn't have to feel like that. Just find someone you can chat to, and sometimes that can make a world of difference.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, again, as someone who's been in those kinds of mindsets and that place, that mental health state, if you are feeling like you're doing it or going through that, potentially chatting with someone via text is fine. If you can call someone, it's way better, especially if it's a good friend, and just have a a voice conversation. It sounds minor, but it makes a profound difference at the time.
Yeah, especially right now when people probably don't have much human contact if they're being smart.
The more you can make that contact, the closer you can get to it being a in-person kind of thing is better in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Regardless, I wish nothing but the best for Reckful's family and friends and just anyone affected by it from his community who may never have met him all the way down to, his significant others, his parents, etc. It's difficult. I mean, all of us are Giant Bomb members or community. We saw Ryan Davis. He passed away 7 years ago yesterday.
Fuck Ryan Davis.
Yeah. Death affects communities and just people. It's not something to make light of.
Nope.
Yep.
Anyways.
Well, with that said, let's move on to a more typical news week, I guess. And then if we've still got some time, it doesn't mean it's happy.
No.
More average
also
news.
Other fucking horrible stuff.
Hey, maybe we'll talk about games near the end of this.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Speaking of other fucking horrible stuff, Amazon's Crucible is now in closed beta. Got him. No.
That story was
they pulled it. What is like Ash's Cricket almost? Like they put it out and they went, "Oh, this is so bad. No one wants to play it. I guess we got to pull it down."
I love the. Sorry. Please go for it, Pat.
I think it's funny that they pulled it. So they pulled it backwards into closed beta.
Yeah.
After coming out for full release, I don't know if you can say it's a closed beta if there's only like 4 people playing. Like if it's because people don't want to play, it's not really a closed beta.
Yeah. So they say they've built like a player council of like hardcore to casual players, everything in between, to get feedback and talk about the game. And like, okay, if you had downloaded the game and like installed and played it, you can still play it as of, I don't know, sometime this week.
That's really funny because that makes my joke even more real.
Yeah. But they will also be rolling out invites over time. But just
good.
Yep.
That game was bad.
It was bad.
All the luck to that team. Hopefully they can figure it out. But it does go to show between Stadia and Amazon's few games they've been showing, you can't just throw a bunch of money at the problem and expect to walk into like massive gaming success.
What I will give Amazon some amount, I mean, it's early, so they could fuck this up, but some amount of credit for here is it would have been really easy for them to say it had a disappointing first month, we're laying off the team and the game's done. So I think I think it's good that they're employing that team still, and they're creating an opportunity for that game to maybe have another chance. So I think that's good. I would rather see it get pulled back to closed beta and see 100%. People still having a job than not. But
they're doing infinitely better than the movie industry right now.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't know if that game's got it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's fine. I was just gonna say VFX houses getting closed at the end of movies because the contracts are up, and they're like, well, can't afford to stay alive anymore. Like, the fact that the team is staying employed is great. I hope they make a better game because the game, it was competent, but I think we talked about it at the time. Like when was that? 2 months ago? 3 months ago? 40 years ago?
I think it was like a month.
I honestly can't remember, but
I feel like it was more than a month, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I remember saying at the time that the game design, like the core conceit of what you were playing in that game, just wasn't fun. So I hope they go back to the drawing board and just come up with something that is, fun.
Well,
May 21st.
The more that I think the more that I think on that game, while initially I thought some of the character sets were kind of fun, I don't think you can save that game. I mean, I don't think you can save that concept. I think that concept is done. I don't think it. I think it's, you can go play Smite. Smite is a good third-person action MOBA, a great third-person action MOBA. That's it. People should stop. Frankly, like, I don't think there's new ground to tread in that space of pressing a Q button and an E button and clicking a mouse. Like, the good games are there, kind of.
That and the fact that it was,
there's always going to be like a different market for that stuff. You could say the same thing about like the ground has been tread on pulling left trigger, pulling right trigger to shoot a gun. Like,
name a new first-person shooter franchise that has been good in the past 5 years.
Look at a list. Super Hot.
Okay, that's not a left trigger, right trigger game though.
But like, I see where you're coming from, but that game in particular was basically a 3v3 for the main mode, set in a map that was about as big as the fucking PUBG or like DayZ map. So it's like,
I'm not. I'm not saying it didn't have problems. I'm just saying like there's always going to be an audience for some of these games. It's just, are they good enough to pull that audience and like have a big enough audience?
I agree with you. I just think if you're really into the if you're really into hero shooters, you're gonna just go play Paladins or Overwatch. Like, I just don't see. People keep trying to make these games, and it feels like the MOBA space to me, where like eventually we realize that no, League and Dota pretty much did it, and you know, Smite's also there as a different perspective.
Pokemon Unite. Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking.
And Pokemon, the same thing is going to happen to Pokemon Unite that happened to a lot of those other games, except that
not at all.
Except that let me rephrase that. What I just said is ridiculously inaccurate. It will thrive in the mobile market in China, and so it will stay alive for a very long time, because that's just the way that is. What I'm saying is, in terms of, there's not going to be a major community around Pokemon Unite in the West. Probably not. Like, that's not going to happen.
It could, it could get a much like younger, more casual audience.
Maybe.
I feel like what I've heard is like Dota and League aren't pulling new players like they used to, and like once you get so big, there's like a point of diminishing returns.
That's not.
I don't know how true that is, but
I guess I think that a lot of those genres that are so hyper specific are just not. There's not really. I would love to see someone turn hero shooters on its head. I love the genre, but the more I think about it, the more I would go play Paladins or Overwatch or Apex.
Made a new first-person shooter, the Valorant.
But it's not
new. It's just Counter-Strike.
Exactly.
That's my point. It's my point. That's what I'm saying, is like, there's only so much ground to tread on the left trigger, right trigger thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that's why, like, I don't think I'll probably ever play. I mean, Call of Duty is just good and solid, and it stays good. I mean, and honestly, Valorant.
Call of Duty, then why you buy a new one? Like,
well, that's my point though, is like, I'm learning lessons. I guess up until very recently, I was the guy who was like, no, I want to see this weird new thing. I'm going to give it a chance. And I'm starting to now go like, no, it's got to really, really prove itself to be interesting. And I think Valorant is a good example. I don't know how well Valorant is doing. I know I uninstalled it this week, like, because I got sick of Vanguard blocking my HOTAS drivers, even though I'm not even using my HOTAS right now. So I don't know, like, everything I see about Valorant is that it's doing kind of disappointing numbers.
I would say that all of this is 100% true in the AA and AAA space, but I think indies are still a really interesting space to watch with that, because they're more willing to take bigger risks and try wilder shit. So I think
the struggle with the genres we're talking about from an indie space, I totally agree, but because they need a player base to be successful, means that those are inherently not games that really work well in an indie context, because you have to be able to get a queue in under 2 minutes for a game like that to have any kind of legs. And I think to that point, there have been some really interesting indie MOBAs that have tried, and they kind of just end up fizzling out because they don't have the player base to keep the game going. I look at a game like Battle Right is a phenomenal game, and it's made by an indie studio. And over time, it just kind of fizzled because the community wasn't large enough to support the game. When you get down to having 300 people playing, you can't support a team of like 12 people and their livelihood from 300 people buying a $5 battle pass,
Totally.
Unfortunately, it's a tough market for indies to break into, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of those games, like the other part that makes the indie scene hard for those games to thrive is that they need polish if they're going to be competitive, because if people find exploits, they will use them.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that. But, yeah.
How many people do we think are watching Valorant on Twitch right now?
Ooh, watching. 2,000?
I'm going to guess 480,000 people.
I'm going to say 2,000.
69,000 people.
Wow.
69.7 thousand.
I way overshot. If Valorant is doing 70K people on a Saturday morning Pacific time, that game it's going to be interesting to see how that game goes. It's the fourth.
People are on.
Yeah. I know. But how many people are watching League right now?
League is 228.
Well, okay. That's lower numbers than I would have thought.
That's the highest that I'm seeing here on the main page, or on like the browse page.
I feel like Valorant came out and fizzled really quick.
Maybe.
But it just could be a misconception, which I still like Valorant. You can't play it by yourself. So unless 4 other people who want to play.
I think as net infrastructure has gotten better with like consoles and stuff, the ability for developers to make these hyper specific co-op games is really cool. I wish I could play them. Like I'd love to play GTFO, but I just living where I do, like time zone stuff, it just doesn't make it like a feasible thing.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
So it sucks, but
and at least GTFO
gone are the days of Left 4 Dead where you can just jump into a game and be fine. But
GTFO at least is a co-op game, right? Like Valorant, given that it is competitive.
Yeah.
It's like you have to keep practicing. You have to have your team your group that you play with. And I feel like this is maybe a little overly specific, but the specifics of this of those games, I saw it during beta where I had like 6 friends who were playing. And so it was like, oh, if everyone's on at once, that's too many people to stack. So we're going to split into 2 smaller groups. And then it's 2 groups of 3 dealing with 3 pubs each, which sucks. Basically, if you have to talk to anyone in Valorant that you do not know personally, you may as well uninstall the game because you're going to get called slurs and be treated like absolute garbage.
That's one thing that Dota did better is that because I would play with a regular crew that was probably about 15 people overall, and you can obviously just only have 5 stacks. But like, let's say you have 6 people and you want to do a match. It's like, well, does that one person sit out? No, you can put him in as a coach.
Yeah.
So that's what you need is you basically need a glorified spectator slot.
I've played a lot of games where people would just be like, there are too many people. Like I'd rather just sit out than split into like 2 smaller groups.
Exactly.
So,
Totally.
That's been my experience.
Yeah. But yeah, it just, and I guess I'm kind of speaking to like, if games had better communities.
Yeah.
And like on Twitter, I said, maybe Riot should work on improving Valorant's community. And granted, I got like hundreds of likes on the tweet. The ratio was good, but I also got hundreds of people DMing me, calling me awful, not hundreds. I got dozens of people DMing me, calling me really awful slurs and stuff and responding to the thread saying that I'm a piece of shit and I'm the problem with video games because I can't sack up and deal with it and stuff. Like I was like, this is absurd. All I said is that Valorant's community is toxic.
And you're proving the point.
And it's like people came out of that was part of what led to me just saying like, you know what, fuck this game. if that's how you all feel, then I will definitely leave. And I think, companies we went a little off topic from what the original thing was, but sort of to circle back to it, those are all pieces of the puzzle in trying to make a competitive game work. And if you're not willing to solve that entire puzzle, it feels like you shouldn't even take it out of the box.
Yeah. Well, speaking of communities coming together and toxicity and maybe try to do something nice. Eve Online back in the news.
There was like a bunch of places you could have taken that, so nice.
Yeah, Eve Online back in the news. Players are holding a full-scale war in celebration of a terminally ill player's birthday.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have read the article, but it's kind of amazing. The player in question, Chappie, I think Chappie 78.
That's Chappie.
I think Chappie. But he has a terminal illness. They don't know if he's going to make it another year, that kind of thing. And he's saying that this might be his last birthday. So the Eve Online community basically gathered and surprised him by just showing a massive event, just just having literally just a full scale war. And it's okay. It's kind of amazing. I love when Eve does this shit, man.
Yeah. And it's, if it's been a bit since Eve came up, we haven't talked about it much on this podcast, but if you haven't played the game, one of the things that's so impressive about these sort of war events, and obviously this is a tragic thing that's inspiring this one, though also it's cool that they're trying to help him have a great birthday, this is not a situation this is not like you're playing Rust or PUBG or something where it's like, oh, you die and you requeue, or oh, you die and you lost like a week of working on your house or whatever. This is like, you can actually extrapolate this out to like real money value,
thousands of dollars.
It's sometimes it's like tens of thousands of dollars in damages done, because when you have the huge ships in this game, I mean, the biggest ships take months of crafting time to build. And so when they go down, it's like really huge. It's a big deal. And so when they throw hundreds and hundreds of these massive ships at each other and they're exploding on both sides, like it's exciting because it's like, wow, this is actual material stuff that's getting wrecked in these big Eve wars. It's really cool.
Yeah. I'll put another link to an article in the show notes, but it's worth a read. Chappie, his story is really interesting. He was discharged from the military after being hit by an IED while serving, and just his whole story is worth a read. And again, I love when Eve does this stuff, because it's just so fascinating to watch, and especially how CCP like encourages it.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, is if you read the article, you can see too, like what happens is Eve has, tens of thousands of players and it's one server. So those players are generally spread out. And so their server architecture can keep up with, I say one server because it's one in the way we think of like MMO servers. It's obviously lots of different machines clustered together to maintain.
You can think of it as one region in the world.
What's interesting is the way that it is not instanced. I know you're using it in a different way, but again, the way we think of it, if you are in a system in Eve, you're seeing all the other players that are in that system playing the game anywhere at all times. So when thousands of people get in one area, it can obviously be a technical challenge for CCP, but instead of just the server going down, they actively go, okay, there's going to be a battle here. Yes, it's 2 a.m. We need to get on and start and work on providing this infrastructure for people. And so they actively move resources around and shunt power and stuff to make it work. And they turn on this thing called time dilation, which slows the combat way down so that the system can accurately calculate the quote the line here. It says like, slows combat down so servers can keep up with the hundreds of thousands of missiles, bullets, and lasers cleaving through player ships. Like, having seen that live, it is so fucking wild, because there really are like hundreds of thousands of hit calculations being done at any given time. And that they're able to like make the system work to do all that accurately is so cool.
Yeah. Yep. Eve continues to amaze.
It was so weird to have nice news for once.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah,
It's welcome. I mean, ultimately the
It's
fact that
sad
chapter
still.
is,
there's a sad undercurrent, but to look
but
at an Eve war and go, oh yeah, Eve Online war.
Yes.
it's because
Finally,
it was.
I feel something.
It's because it was a celebration, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was the Eve
was a-
community coming together to do something nice for somebody.
And the Eve community has its super toxic elements too, but
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
it is,
God,
it is
yeah.
cool
Yeah,
the way
of
that
course,
it comes
yeah.
together sometimes. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, I don't know, is it companies coming together, companies doing something that they should have been doing a long time ago, and addressing their toxic communities, something we were talking about earlier with Ubisoft and just in general. Microsoft is starting to ban folks who put certain symbols on their cars in Forza, the liveries, I believe is what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
You can put all sorts of stuff on there. You can put anime ladies on your car.
Yeah, you can.
You can put different anime ladies on your car. You can put a Goku
you
on
can.
your
You
car.
put guns on your car. You can put a cool gun on the
A
side
weed
of your car.
leaf. But things you cannot put on your car may include something like the Confederate flag, swastikas, and the rising sun from the Japanese imperial flag.
Yeah. So
which is the sun with the rays coming off of it, right? Yeah. Which is still used by the Japanese Navy.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to that culturally at all.
Yeah,
I know that for a lot of people in Korea and China and a lot of places, that flag is absolutely a hate symbol. So
it's flown by the nationalists who are all anti-immigrant here.
And
so
I mean,
I think
sorry, go for it.
I think it's so cool to see that cool is maybe the wrong word. It is positive to see that they name things like the Confederate flag in this statement, because that is a symbol, probably in a similar way to the rising sun in Japan, that here it's only been in the last few years. Like when I was a teenager and I would talk about how the Confederate flag is a hate symbol, I get laughed at. Like people didn't think of it that way on a large scale here. And didn't look at it that way. And of course, there's still a lot of people here who are trying to make arguments that it isn't a hate symbol, but it really is. And so it's really encouraging to see. This is one of the great things that I think is coming out of all of the strife in political strife that's occurring in the US is that thing should be looked at the same way as we look at other hate symbols. Like, it's a different scale and a different thing. I don't think it works to like say that the Confederate flag is the same thing as a swastika, because they mean very different things and are both awful in their own way. But at the same time, I think we should look at the Confederate flag that way in this country. And I'm glad that companies are starting to take a stand, whether it's NASCAR or Microsoft or whatever, and starting to really show that that's a hate symbol.
Sure. Yeah. And even thinking back, let's say 15 years ago, as someone who does not live in the United States of America, for us back then, it was very much like, oh, that's the Lynyrd Skynyrd thing, right? It's like, like we never saw it, like we didn't have the history behind it. But now that that's coming out and people are actually associating it with that and putting whole movements behind it, it's like, oh yeah, no, fuck that.
My cousin lives in Alabama. I don't have like a close relationship with them at all, but they post the most asinine shit on Facebook, like at the bowling alley with like my friend, my baby, and my friend's baby, and I'm like, okay, and they don't mean like they're infants; they mean like they're boyfriends, but.
Cool.
She posted shit like that, but then she posted, this was like in high school, so like I don't know, 10-ish years ago, she posted a bedazzled Confederate flag, said like the South will rise again, and I was like, hey, yo, this is fucked up. And just like a bunch of Alabama people be like, no, it's our heritage, it's not fucked up, is I'm like, you're talking about secession again.
And talking about secession based around the idea of owning human beings.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that I think I've had that conversation with acquaintances. I don't even know that I would call them friends in the South, or who think they live in the South, who actually live in fucking Ohio or somewhere
north of the Mason-Dixon,
who will argue that, the Confederate flag is a symbol of their heritage. And it's like, yeah, your fucking racist heritage, your heritage that was about like awful, horrific things, crimes against people's human rights, if that part of your heritage you want to sell is something you want to celebrate, fuck you. Like that's awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, that's one of those things, like that's one of the, like when I talk about being frustrated about pearl clutching, that's sort of one of the things I'm getting at is like, no, we need to just say, if you fly this flag in your backyard and you're educated on what it means, fuck you. And if you're not educated on what it means, you need to be instructed.
Yeah.
And if you're going to push back about that and say, well, that's not what it means to me, then like you suck. You're not a good person.
If Golden Girls could figure this out.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking
coming for the Gadsden flags next.
Yeah. God. Well, speaking of people who need to be instructed and just all around nasty people, this is going to be a weird segue, but the Harry Potter devs are the Harry Potter game was confirmed being made by Avalanche, not confirmed via a report by Jason Schreier, who spoke to devs at the Avalanche that worked on Disney Infinity, not the Avalanche that makes Just Cause.
Yeah.
Just Cause. Okay.
But
anyway,
which that news a year ago would have excited many people on this podcast.
Oh yeah.
With still trepidation.
Yeah, sure. With
this
caveats.
This news, we have talked at length about what we want from a Harry Potter game. Footage did leak. I believe we talked about it. But recently, J.K. Rowling once again had a transphobic rant on Twitter.
Which was a culmination of years of transphobic behavior
and
social media practices.
Saying things on social media and just like, oh, I'm not transphobic, but mask is fully off at this point.
Yeah, I'm not transphobic, and here's why.
I'm not transphobic,
actually
but
transphobia.
Like, there was a thing where she said she loved Stephen King so much and respected him, and then someone asked him if trans lives matter or trans women are women, and he said, of course, trans women are women, and then she like deleted all her stuff about Stephen King.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a bit of the story that I'm like looking at because of what we just said. Jason Schreier at Bloomberg had a story about how some of the devs at Avalanche are feeling uneasy and uncomfortable working on the Harry Potter game at this point because of this. The story was a little, I feel like, didn't dive into that as much as I would have liked, like on those feelings. It was more like, oh yeah, they're uncomfortable, and also, hey, here's when the game's coming out next year. And I mean, stuff like that.
I'm curious as to what uncomfortable means. Like, I would give them the benefit of the doubt because I assume that, I like to assume that they are uncomfortable for the right reasons, but is it we're uncomfortable because now there's a stigma around this and we're releasing a game, or is it we're uncomfortable because J.K. Rowling is transphobic?
Yeah.
You know,
and
like
personally reading the story, I couldn't suss that out.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just an idiot, but
no, I don't think so. I think it's hard to tell for sure.
Okay.
But
I'm glad if someone else read the story and also felt the same way. I'm glad I'm not the only one, but again, this isn't new information. Like,
that's what I mean is
like, if you're uncomfortable just now, like, I guess maybe if you weren't paying attention, but you're working on a Harry Potter game, you should be aware of what J.K. Rowling is doing.
Kind of going back to my earlier themes, like, I think I've seen a lot of people still, and it's a very prevalent thing in my age group because I was the age for Harry Potter. And like, I went to book releases at midnight and read them in a weekend. And trust me, I grew up on that shit and loved it. We need to be able to say that J.K. Rowling is transphobic and that there's a lot of problematic elements in those books, and we should not hold them in the same kind of, we need to be critical of them. And the way that I've seen some people that I know say like, well, it sucks that she's transphobic, but you know, it's still my favorite series of all time and stuff, is like, that's fine. I'm not saying you can't like a thing from a problematic creator. I mean, I still
Time
really
is-
like Lovecraft
yeah.
stories, and he was a virulent, awful human being.
Time is showing that more and more of the things that we like actually have very problematic creators.
But you really need to be willing to interrogate the issues in those works.
Yes.
and the sort of like maybe it's not, maybe we can stop putting our Harry Potter houses in our Twitter profiles kind of thing, you know, like that's kind of what I'm getting at, is the like the kind of aggressive fandom. Maybe maybe as a generation we could start to dial that back a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I don't even know, because it's not consumerism as culture so much. Like it's a lot of people's childhoods were very influential books, and it's hard to go like look at something that was that important to you as a formative thing and go, but that I'm not a bad person because I like this thing and like the need to defend it or something. But like you need to be able to go, this person is bad. These problematic elements are not completely divorced from the thing she created.
You hit the nail on the head too. It's stop trying to defend it.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna, I enjoy a lot of Lovecraft stories. I'm never going to defend the problematic elements of those works or him as a human being ever.
Yeah.
I will never, ever, ever argue with someone who points out how awful he was.
Yeah.
And how awful certain parts of those stories are. And I think that that's the kind of relationship you need to have with media that is problematic like that.
You can channel your inner Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
I love Harry Potter, but
yes, that's the but, not J.K. Rowling is transphobic, but it is, I love Harry Potter, but
exactly. Be willing to have that. You are large, you can contain multitudes, and those multitudes can be, hey, Harry Potter's pretty fun, and J.K. Rowling's a transphobe. Like, it's bad. Come on.
Yeah.
All right.
And
well,
also that's something that isn't new, because like look at The Wizard of Oz. Look at Judy Garland and how she was treated.
Yeah.
And then it's like, when you're a kid, you watch that, you're like, this is awesome. And it, it envelops you in its universe. Then when you're an adult, you find out all the things Judy Garland went through when making it. And you're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I had not heard about any of this.
You should
enjoy going down a Wikipedia hole.
Yeah. And I also think it's important to say it's one thing. You can say like Harry Potter's pretty fun, but J.K. Rowling's transphobe. But you should also keep in mind things like maybe portraying goblins the way that that she did was fucked, and maybe the fact that the only like Asian name she apparently was able to come up with was Chang is fucked.
Which is two last names.
Like that stuff is bad in those books. There's bad what people who suck as people often also do shitty stuff in the media they create, and we need to be better about acknowledging those things too. And that's what I'm kind of getting at with the Lovecraft comparison, is like there is racism in those stories. He was not just a racist writer. Those stories include awful racism in them. And so you need to be willing to say, fuck that. And it's not even like Lovecraft wrote great stories, but Lovecraft wrote very complicated stories that have a lot of baggage and severe issues in them. And it is, you need to not be defensive of those parts of those stories too, when it comes to Rowling or Lovecraft or whoever, or Orson Scott Card, whoever it is that whose stories you like.
And there is like a bit of like kind of the internet meme thing is like, oh, these stories just sprung into existence with no creator. That's so weird. Or, oh, Hatsune Miku wrote Harry Potter or whatever. Yes. But it's like, it's, haha, funny joke. But you still have to like tackle these problems that exist within the media.
Yes.
It just doesn't make it go away. But yeah.
Were you saying?
Can we go back to the Evo Online story? That one felt better.
I got, you know what? I got another feel-good story for you. PS2 piracy is cool now, baby.
Yeah, it is. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, you play burn DVDs without a mod chip. What's the deal here?
I haven't looked into the actual details of implementation, but yeah, that's essentially
God
it.
damn it, Alex.
What? I'm not going to read the GitHub repos of how to do this.
Okay,
But
so
yeah.
this is okay. Let's see if we can find this here.
It's kind of some homebrew
PS2.
shit where people were able to basically burn an ISO of a PS2 game, and which previously you would have had to require. I don't know if you heard that really loud car in the
Whoa.
background.
Yes,
but
I
Fucking
did.
rip it.
yeah, it's 7 in the morning. Anyways, fuck, I lost my train of thought. Yes, so you like if you put an ISO on a disc, just a DVD, that wouldn't have worked because of the way that copy protection works on the PS2. You needed to do some stuff, and it's not trivial to just kind of bypass that stuff in the ISO layer, because encryption is intense. Not going to get into encryption and salting and hashing and all that stuff right now. That's for another topic for another podcast probably. But yes, the community surrounding it was able to bypass all of that kind of shit. And now you can just burn it with a very specific codec essentially and just get games to work, which is like on a physical PlayStation 2, which is pretty cool.
And you can get like emulators running, like people, they're like a SNES emulator.
Yes.
And
it's awesome.
let's see. So this Kotaku article says he CTERT, I guess he developed a way exploiting the console's DVD player functionality by triggering corruption in video playback and then running a game through the resulting hole blown in the system's copy protection.
That's so
it's like
awesome.
the too long didn't read. You don't need like any special equipment or anything. Like you don't need to use the USB stuff or anything like that.
Mod chips. Yep. It's so cool. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, Modern Vintage Gamer is another really good YouTube channel. He has tons of videos, but he has one from a year or two ago, which is about the initial steps of getting past the PS2 security.
Yeah, and it sounds like they think that the same principle might work on PS1, PS3, and PS4 as well, but they've not confirmed anything or not exposed anything. So, well,
yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah,
the homebrew scene is really fascinating when they're working with like discrete hardware like that. It's very cool.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what's next on our list here. We've got all right. We can talk about the end of an era or the an era being reborn. The
byproduct of a new era. Yeah. I don't know, Pat. Which one do you want?
Oh, I'm not going to say the thing that came to mind. Neither of these stories are particularly impactful to me. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's talk about we'll talk about Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about damn time. Actually, the game name is It's About Time because it's the game's about like time travel, but also it's been such a long time since Crash Bandicoot 3. So it's about
if you
kept you waiting, huh?
If you don't make a sequel within 10 years to a thing, then you have to make a joke about the how long it's been since the last one. That's a cultural
Ratchet
mandate.
and Clank did it with just like when they jumped to the PS3.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's been borne out.
They put out like a game of those like every year once they started coming out. So, but
it's a stupid title.
I wish we could just let things die. I wish we could just let things go. Not everything needs sequels.
But it made money, and Activision doesn't make new games.
I know.
So
yeah,
would have been better 10 years ago. But anyways,
some people were worried that there were going to be microtransactions in the game because there were some costumes.
It was beyond worry. They were actually like able to like say like Toys for Bob, I think, had put out the original thing saying there's not going to be like DLC or microtransaction stuff. Then people were able to point directly to DLC and what looked like microtransactions.
There are some costumes that you get with the digital version of the game that don't cost any extra money. They just only come with a digital version of the game, and they're like no microtransactions planned for the game. But I don't know if they were the ones who did Crash Team Racing, like the reboot or the remaster, but they said the same thing. And then shortly after launch, or a little bit after launch, they added microtransactions in the way of like a season pass type thing.
I want to choose my words carefully because I don't want to be dismissive to people who are excited about this game in any way. I mean that. That's not sarcasm. And I don't want to be dismissive to anyone who cares about this stuff because, it's fair. I'm really surprised that this became a notable story because I cannot imagine like Crash costumes in a Crash 4. I just can't. It's so odd to me that it became a thing at all, that people were tweeting enough about that it caught the eye.
Registered. Yeah. I don't know, man.
Like
microtransactions make people mad.
Yeah. Microtransactions. He's out here.
But microtransactions operating within a single player Crash Bandicoot game. It's just like
that would be noteworthy if it did happen.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is if they had ended up putting costumes with like that would have been shocking. Like, you remember when there was the whole like Rocksteady was putting tons of Batman costumes into the Batman games?
Yeah. Oh my god! And you had to use like a spreadsheet to figure out which things you had to pre-order.
Pre-order bonuses.
Look, I love comic book characters and I understand being super into like, oh, this is cool, I can be this Batman, but it's also a fucking single player game. Like,
yeah,
I can pull up a 3D model viewer of a character and just look at it. Like, it's like, it's cool in Batman and cool in Spider-Man because a lot of that stuff was like stuff you unlocked through in-game achievements. So then it becomes to me more like, oh, this is neat. Like, yeah, I get a different spider suit because I did these things, and so now I can swing around as this Spider-Man, and that's cool. But like the idea of if they were like, oh, we're going to put in 4 new suits and they're $1 each for Spider-Man, I wouldn't have given a fuck one way or the other because that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. But there are people who do care, and I
don't mean to belittle them or dismiss them, but it's less that I think it's silly to care and more that I am surprised that there are enough people who care that it would register on Twitter as a thing,
or enough people to make it worthwhile in general for the developer. But yeah,
I think it's an interesting thing. We didn't write this down as a news topic, but there was also the thing that came up where it looks like PS5 and Xbox Series X games might cost $10 more.
Some developers are considering, is it 2K is charging $70 for the PS5 and Xbox Series X version of their NBA game.
Yep. And the Twitter sphere and the general response to that has been pretty universally negative, which, it makes sense. But also, people also don't want to have microtransactions in their games. Like,
yep.
The point being, development costs have gone way the fuck up.
Yep.
But costs in the consumer side have stayed relatively the same. So we've kind of fallen into this trap of like, oh, everything's going to cost this much forever.
Well, but if there's also the problem. Yeah, there's also the problem where like wages for many people have not increased and have stayed astronomically low. And there are certainly people who can afford, especially people who are buying like brand new consoles at launch. Most people should be able to afford like a $70 game. Yeah. But with the way that like it'll start to price, so especially as it moves more digital, I think it's going to start to price more and more people out of the hobby, at least, initially. And GameStop, maybe they still got a fighting chance then.
I think would be interesting to see how this conversation would go if NBA 2K wasn't the game that was sort of the first one that we were hearing this about, because that is a game. Number one, 2K makes fucking ass loads of money. So if any studio can support development without increasing the cost of their games, I would think it would be 2K.
Lots of microtransactions in those games.
And then also, that's the other thing, is the NBA 2K games are absolutely rife with like we're talking like
Madden, FIFA.
Well, but really 2K in particular, it has all of the problems that Madden and FIFA have, but it also has a core mode where the idea is you spend money to upgrade your stats. Like that you can grind them out. I have a friend who plays my player pretty, and he said he always ends up spending at least $100 a year on point cards because everyone does. So people spend because you can just spend to increase your character's level. And if you don't do that to keep up with people, you get matched with in shitty games where you're 10 points lower on the stats line and then you lose because stats matter a lot in that game. So people basically just buy their way up to the cap. That way they can be playing at the cap where then skill is the only thing that matters and like actual Twitch skill with the game. So for NBA 2K to be the one to first come out as maybe being $70, I don't have a problem with games increasing. I actually think it's a good thing if it means better wages for people working in the industry.
Sure.
But I think if we see a greater variation in the scale,
you're right. I think that's what's going to happen.
More $50, more $40 games, more,
I think that's a good point because I think we should have a greater scale because to translate this to Canadian bucks, if this change happens, a AAA game will cost about $100 here, which is a lot.
That's expensive.
And if you start thinking about that in terms of how much a console costs, it's a lot of money, and it's the kind of thing where parents are going to be like, do I really want to spend this $100 on this one video game, which potentially might cost more if it has microtransactions? I see that perspective, but also, it should. But we should be able to recompense the developers who are actually making it.
But my concern is also what's to say that extra $10 will actually go to the developers.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on the publisher, I guess.
I also think it's interesting to see if I were in marketing at 2K, and I don't have their financials and stuff, but I would look at Fortnite and go, holy shit, Fortnite makes so much money. Why are we not making this game free?
Let me play a Sheev and dunk a basketball.
Well, why aren't we releasing this game as a free platform and just doing a NBA Game Pass every month, and
it would make
people can
so
pay
much
$10
sense for a sports game.
Yeah, that's what I find really surprising. Is if you look at the biggest video game in the world, it is, and it's not just Fortnite. Before that, it was League of Legends. Free to play games make money hand over fist, and it's interesting to me that a studio like 2K would instead go the route of increasing the cost of a game. I think if I were someone like Microsoft, and given the approach that they have, I might say, yeah, you know what, Halo Infinite's going to be $70, but you also have Game Pass as an option. So if you want to subscribe, for the same cost, you can get a year of Game Pass, and maybe that's a better value proposition for you.
You know what just boggles my mind on this one is
that Evolve isn't still around to be a test case for this. Agreed.
That Roblox is the biggest thing also.
No, that in the case of this NBA game, that if you buy the PS4, the Xbox One version of the game, if you want a forwards compatible version that will basically the smart delivery kind of upgrade, but it's not smart delivery because you have to buy $100 version of the game if you want the one that will upgrade to the next gen game when you buy a new console.
It's just so funny because every year the NBA 2K game is always it's starting to impact the actual scores now too, where it's this game is one of the best sports games ever conceived, but they're so fucking greedy that it hurts the quality of the game. And instead of getting better, they're just getting worse. How is that possible?
I don't.
Hey,
if they said, hey, you have to buy the $70 version of the game and then you can upgrade,
or pay a $10 upgrade fee or something from the $60 version.
Yeah. No, if you're going to get the new console soon, because you're going to buy the next gen version anyway in a year. So if you're going to upgrade relatively soon, just pay the $70 up front and get the current gen and then upgrade. But no, they're god damn it,
it's just ridiculous.
Hey, but at least Crash Bandicoot 4 doesn't have microtransactions.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, Andre, that
2K just has so much fucking money from like Grand Theft Auto, and
they can afford it.
Yeah.
But to your point, Andre, I think what it means is the next generation. It isn't. See, my feelings on this are largely positive because we'll have to wait and see if it actually helps with development costs for game costs to increase. But I think AAA game cost prices go up. It means there's potentially a way to offset the increased cost. And maybe even it could improve the lives of some developers. Maybe not. Who knows? Remains to be seen. But what it also does is it provides a lot more room for indies who maybe for them, if anything, with something like Unreal Engine 5, it sounds like that might make the pipeline smoother for a smaller developer. So maybe it means that your $30 experiences will from an indie studio will be a lot more accepted and have a better shot, which would be awesome. So I'm largely positive.
More people buying indie games and stuff. This is not a great time to be pushing
agreed
like a price increase.
Yeah, agreed.
Developers should be paid. If that means they need to charge more for the games, there are certainly games out there that deserve, like, with the amount of time you get out of them, like are worth $70, $80, $100. But now it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
I have a hard time because I don't ever want to come off as classist. Like, it's certainly not a goal of mine to say that if you can't afford a $70 game, then it's not for you. That's wrong. And I don't like that kind of thinking. But at the same time, if I look at something like, we see the kind of intricacy in something like Cyberpunk, like if they said that game was going to cost $100, I would go, okay. Like, it seems you've been working on it for years and for like 7 years now or whatever. And that game looks like it has been designed so heavily and so many hours have gone into it. Yeah. I mean, if it means that you're compensating your developers appropriately, $100 is fair to me for an experience like that. And I'm privileged in that I could make that happen and get that. And you're right that it prices people out, and that sucks. And so when I say what I'm about to say, I don't mean this as like this is just the easy solution for those people. But I think you're also seeing with a lot of games like that, there are ways to get access to them, even digitally, not just used copies, within a year that are more affordable. And between sales and stuff and packages like Humble Bundles and things like that, which I know are not really PC friendly or console friendly. Those are more on PC, but
some of them have moved more that direction. But in general, it's mostly PC based.
So Sony has pretty good sales though, and stuff like that. Like if Days Gone, if you really want to play Days Gone, you could get that for pretty cheap at this point,
like $7 basically.
And that's not just true of if you want to play The Witcher 3. It's very cheap to do that at this point.
And games have much longer tails now. Like The Witcher 3 has continued to be like one of the top selling games on Steam. Now, like, as more like big name games are coming back to Steam, like EA stuff, it kind of has moved down. But like, you make a game, and with the sales and stuff, they can have really long tails. And so I wonder where that line crosses, the supply demand thing, where like, okay, $70, we stopped selling it at $70, time to drop the price. Maybe we see just like more price drops down. Like, okay, it's 70 for like 6 months, then we drop down to 60, and then stuff like that, and sales and whatnot. But I don't know.
I was going to say, we don't have to dwell on it forever, but the one thing I'll say is, the video game I have spent the most money on has been Dota 2, and that is a free video game.
Yeah.
Like I think they are the ones who got it right. Like, yes, I know League kind of has fixed it over the years, but I think Dota is the one that got it right from the start, where it is 100% functional right out of the box. Like, everything you need to have the full experience is right there for free. And if you want to look cool, you put in some bucks, you know? Like, I think they got it right. And if that was a $70 game, I don't know if I would have felt great putting in extra dollars to look cool,
Sure.
But like, I think over the 5 years I played it, I probably put close to $200 or $300 into it. and that's way more than $70. So, like, I think,
but not every game can do that. Not every game has that path available to them.
Of course, and I think like it's very like I don't know that a single player game could ever have that, because why would you? You're not showing how cool you look to anyone else other than if you're taking screenshots. But like I think free becomes the new $60, and we just have to find the right way to do it. Like I'm thinking of that from a developer perspective as well, because it's a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, and I guess my thinking is, if cost on anything is going to go up to support budgets and livelihoods, I would rather see it happen with like a non-necessity. Like, as much as I love video games and as much as it is a hobby, I would rather see that cost increase happen there than in housing or food or something like that.
Sure.
So I think that's part of it, is like, if I'm going to pay a premium, an increased premium on anything, I would rather it be art, I guess, than necessities to live. So I don't know. I kind of, it's been a long time coming for games to go up in price, frankly.
If they want to demonstrate and prove and say, like the publishers want to say, this money is going to devs, not executives, then okay, great.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But
and they won't, and it won't. That money will go into 2K president's pockets. But you know what the answer to that question is? You don't fucking buy 2K21.
Well, yeah,
and
of course.
That's not going to happen. So it's like, it's tough.
Let's just say right here, fucking unionize.
Yeah, it's
get what you're owed. Make it work.
And tax people, for Christ's sakes, in this country. God. Anyway,
we never talked about. There was some stuff about Game Workers Unite back the week or two ago, a few weeks ago, with like some racism in that industry or in that organization. And
as a leftist, I gotta say, I'll be the first to tell you, the reason that we can't get anything done is because there's a lot of sexist, racist leftists. And until we root that problem out, we're not going to win any elections or win any movement.
Yeah. Well, that's, okay. We got just a few more news stories.
Just one, right?
Well, one, but I don't know. I think you want to talk about the IOX, right?
Yeah, that doesn't need to be a news story. That counts as news. You're right.
But end of an era. The 29 years comes to a close, and Andy McNamara, editor-in-chief of Game Informer, is moving on to greener pastures. Heading to a farm upstate.
Would you say it's the end of an Andy McNamara?
No, it's not the end of Andy McNamara. He is moving on to stay in games, but probably working on the like publishing side of things, or like PR side.
I mean, like a Magnum -era.
Like he's
like a condom. Like a Andy Magnum era? What? Are you saying Andy McNamara has a big dick? Like, is that what we're saying?
Okay, it's like an end of an era.
Yeah,
the Andy Magnum era.
Like if you look at his name and you instead of spelling it Namara, you spelled it Namera. So it's like the word era.
Let's just dissect this
McNamara.
This extraordinarily average joke as much as we can.
I don't get it. It's not the end of Andy McNamara. He's still alive. He's just changing jobs.
We have to move on.
If it's the end of anything, I think it's going to be the end of Game Informer.
That's probably true.
Well, that's true. But no, yeah, it's a condom joke. You got it.
You figured it out the first time.
But he's been doing that shit for what, 29
years.
29 years. Jesus.
Yeah, almost 30.
Yeah.
There is someone else there who has been there. I can't remember their name. They've been there for 20 years. They are also moving on.
Yes. Oh, I forget their name too, but I saw that article. Yeah, I don't think Game Informer survives.
No, I think
almost no way.
I don't know how much this is. I'm sure what happened is they've wanted to close Game Informer for a while, and Andy McNamara also simultaneously found a good opportunity somewhere. I doubt that this is just like
they being GameStop.
Yes,
GameStop's private equity overlords.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know, and I'm just kind of trying to tread carefully because I think that Andy did great work, and I think that a lot of the folks there have done great work, but I just don't know that Game Informer is like for when I worked at GameStop, even it felt weird to me that GameStop published this magazine, and to some extent, like the cover stories are cool and the quality of writing inside of it was good, but I just don't know how you compete with the ways that you can just get this news through the internet and stuff. Like they competed by having cool cover stories for sure.
Yeah. And
But
exclusives when things are announced, but
yeah, I don't know. Like I know that
all that stuff's going to get turned around and reported.
Yeah,
like, a Game Informer says blah 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 blah.
The thing, I honestly hear about Game Informer the most because my dad likes video games, but he doesn't read gaming websites at all. He gets Game Informer, so he will say like, "Oh, did you see this cool thing?" And I'll be like, "Yes, Dad, I heard about that 2 months ago, but it's cool that it's in Game Informer this month."
Yeah.
It's you know,
it's just kind of a byproduct of how the era has changed, you know.
Yeah, and it's too bad.
Oh, I get it. So like McNamara, but
yeah, it's a condom.
Yeah, and I guess
it's the thing that comes over the magazine when you get it, so that way when it's on the store shelf you can't read through it and then not buy it. Yeah,
I guess I'm kind of dancing around the notion that like, I don't want anyone to lose their jobs, so that's for sure. But are we kind of a little too precious about preserving print magazines in an era where, like in a Magnum era, where we can get that information in a way that's just better?
I think,
and like they do online stuff.
They do, but I think they just need to cut the magazine. You know, they just need to move on.
They just need to cut off. So they need to triage. They just need to cut off the GameStop branch and they just need to separate
and just be Game Informer.
I mean, Game Informer is like in the past year, 2 years, they've lost so many people through layoffs and people just leaving of their own accord, like Ben Hansen and a few people, they started a Patreon, correct? People and they're, especially right now because of COVID, there are not a lot of jobs to go to. If GameStop is still forced to close, I imagine they're not moving a lot of Game Informer subscriptions through their Power Up rewards. So I can't imagine there's a lot of money coming into that place right now.
Yeah.
And there are people who were laid off last year still haven't found jobs.
And to your point, Alex, I think it's true that they could have cut the print version, but I'm never going to go to GameInformer.com to get news or information. I will click a link if there's a really good story, but my inkling is not going to be. It's not that I'll never go there because I don't want to. It's just I'm never going to think.
But I mean, you do a rebrand thing and stuff like that, and you can overcome that.
It's hard to get that market share, though. Really hard. Polygon and Kotaku are so entrenched in that span. IGN, it's tough to.
But Game Informer is also an institution, so it's not like they're starting fresh. It would be a challenge. I'm not saying it would work 100% guaranteed, but you can make that push.
I think you see with stuff like The Escapist that has a pretty rich history. They tried to relaunch and they're not doing so hot.
Yeah, but there was a spicy history there.
There was for sure,
a less pleasant history.
But I guess what I'm saying is there's a a legacy there, but also with Game Informer. But also that doesn't really matter if you can't get the person who doesn't have any clue anything unless you can get the person who doesn't have a clue who Andy McNamara is to click on your link. It doesn't mean anything if you have a 29-year history. It's that's why I think they would have a hard time rebranding to an all online outfit as well. So I don't know what the answer is. I just hope that if there's people there that are going to lose their jobs, they find new ones, because I don't want anyone to lose their jobs.
It just seems like it's a saturation point in the industry.
That's absolutely
across multiple industries with like YouTube subscription things and Patreon and
well, and that's what I worry about when I hear about Patreons too, is just like I think about a Patreon, like people who were, I forget the names of the people who were laid off from Game Informer that started the Patreon.
I don't think those folks were laid off. I think
maybe they just left.
I think those folks left. And
that's an even better example than I think of something like places like Kind of Funny and stuff. Like generally they make, regardless of how you feel about people there, they make very high quality content. And I think that they deserve to have an audience and deserve to have livelihoods based on the content they create, for sure. I mean, I think everyone deserves to have a livelihood no matter what they do, but you know what I'm saying. But I wonder sometimes if it's like, are you squeezing out people that really could use those patron numbers by operating that way, kind of? And so I wonder how, like in more niche gaming media, how all that is going to shake out as larger outlets close.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, because you can't also say like, oh, well, if this Patreon didn't exist, then those $5 would go somewhere else.
Totally. No, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
those $5 might not even be on Patreon at all.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a really interesting dilemma that is only becoming more and more difficult as Patreon becomes worse and worse, and more and more people are starting Patreons, OnlyFans, and whatever else they may be going to.
And I mean, it's honestly part of why I've always appreciated, as I've had my ups and downs with them in terms of my feelings towards people there and the content that they make and stuff. It's part of why I've always felt good about my Giant Bomb subscription, is because they're owned by a huge corporation, of course. So it's a little different, but
Whiskey Media.
It has always been, for them, it has always felt like I am going to giantbomb.com and putting my credit card information into giantbomb.com to give giantbomb.com my subscription money. Yeah. And that's just always felt, it's weirdly still feels ahead of its time. And even though it's been around for 10 years, and it
gives them the freedom to do the things they want to do instead of the things that they're like, okay, we need to do sponsored videos and, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I just kind of wish that more outlets had that. Yeah. Had that, I guess. Like I wish that I could give Waypoint $5 a month and then get ad-free shit and exclusive streams and stuff.
I would love to be able to afford to give all the creators I like more money, or money at all, but
I mean, or offer, of course, I think you should. I'm not saying lock all your content up behind a subscription either.
Oh, no, for sure. But being able to tip them or whatever would be great. But for whatever legal reasons or whatever it may be, depending on the site or the organization, or whoever, it's like you run into the Twitch guys like, oh, can I give the money back?
The carbon.
But like, there's kind of you just kind of need to evolve. I mean, look
what happened to Evolve. Yes. That's not what the thing to do at all.
We all need to get into Evolve right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
I'm going to start a private Evolve server.
I wonder if there are private Evolve servers.
There have to be.
I don't know.
But like, a company which went through an evolution, and they're a weird one to bring up now considering the current goings on, is Bon Appetit, right? It went like, not talking about any of the bullshit that went on with Rappo and all that kind of stuff. And the current ongoing issues, they went from kind of a hoity-toity only magazine that like you would look at and be like, boy, that's not something I'm ever going to buy because that's fucking for fancy people and I just make goddamn ramen, to like the most popular YouTube channel online. And that was an evolution.
Was that were they really the most popular YouTube channel?
Well, in their field for sure.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't know if I think PewDiePie is still the highest, but
I'm not
bizarrely, obscenely popular channels.
I just was curious. I wasn't sure if that was if you were making a point or if that was a real stat. That's all.
Then I'll backtrack that and say that became their bread and butter more so than the magazine.
Yeah.
So like it just requires some form of evolution, and what that evolution is, it's different per publication probably.
Totally. Yeah.
Andre, you look like you're gonna poop.
I'm realizing that you can still play Evolve.
I think you can. Yeah.
You have to have it's peer to peer. It's not dedicated servers.
Yeah.
Cool.
What if we all got together and played Evolve?
I almost slammed my desk and then I realized how bad that would be on the recording, so I refrained. But if anyone ever wants to play Evolve,
I mean,
it's
still on Steam.
Does it support Turtle Rock if we do?
I think it's free on Steam.
And it's
if it's even on. Maybe it's not on Steam anymore. Maybe you just need to have it in your library.
We can kickstart the Evolve community and get Turtle Rock back. I know. Start working on the game again.
Is Turtle Rock? Oh, what is Turtle Rock doing?
They got bought by somebody, I want to say.
2K or something? I don't know.
They got bought by somebody.
I thought they got
Valve.
Yeah, that's what I was. Okay, yeah, Valve bought them.
Yeah. Weren't they Valve South for a while?
I don't know.
Wasn't that their name?
But they've worked on
whatever.
They've worked on stuff since then. Like they've done support work on stuff. I think they've done support work on stuff like Half-Life Alyx and
yeah. Oh well, because everybody worked on Half-Life Alyx.
Didn't they announce that like Left 4 Dead-y kind of thing? The back 4 blood with the number 4.
Yeah,
I think. Oh yeah,
is that
you're
them?
Right. Yeah,
I don't know if it's them, but it's a new Left 4 Dead. I'm pretty sure
it is.
Yeah.
So I guess they're not at Valve anymore. They're
okay.
Yeah, I didn't. I
don't know.
Are they making another Left 4 Dead?
Warner Brothers is publishing Back 4 Blood.
Oh, it's called Back 4 Blood. I thought it was actually. I thought that was just the tease, and it was actually Left 4 Dead 3.
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't think they were still.
That was announced over a year ago.
Yeah.
May 2019.
Well, I'll be honest. Love Turtle Rock. Not going to play another co-op zombie game. I'm just going to say it.
Oh boy. Well, that's the end of the Andy McNamara. But there's a new era.
You circle back to it, and that's funnier than the 7th time.
New era of indie games. I don't know, the indie obscura era. It's the second age of indie obscura.
It's back, baby.
Yeah. I haven't had time to watch this. It's the 16 games I heard.
Yeah,
right?
they went with a smaller number of games this time. In a lot of cases, they had more interviews with developers, or longer interviews with developers, like more in depth, which was kind of cool. So for those who don't know what the hell we're talking about, I think we talked about it after their first show, which I don't remember when that was, like a month and a half.
I think we talked about it multiple times.
Yeah, it's come up a few times. But Indie Obscura is a great little website. They're part of like Greenlit and Shack News. They partner with Shack News for this. And the IOX is their little showcase of indie games. And they do a really good job with it. It's really nice. Production value is good. Voiceover, good video editing and stuff like that. And it's just a good way to showcase games you otherwise would not have heard of. So that's the short version. They showed 16 games this time. I won't go through all of them. I picked 5 that I thought were pretty cool because I think the show overall was pretty good this time. I don't know if it was as strong as the first time, just because the first time was about the same length, but they had way more games. So it was just kind of cool to be like, oh yeah, they're just moving on. This one, sometimes it was lingering a little bit too long and I just kind of got distracted and did other things for a little bit until the next game. But, whatever. Some of the ones they showed were really amazing. So the ones I pulled up as ones that I kind of immediately went to Steam and hit add to wish list is one called Before I Forget. Pat, I feel like you would love Before I Forget, just from looking at it and from what they were talking about.
It's one of my favorite Slipknot songs.
Fuck.
Is that the one that goes, push my fingers into my eyes?
No, that's a different song. That's Duality.
The only not forget.
Anyway, sorry.
So
back to this game.
This is a game about dementia. With a soundtrack by Slipknot. No.
I would fucking rip. We're joking. I legitimately really love Slipknot. So, but continue.
So before I forget, it's kind of a walking sim kind of thing, and it is about an older lady with dementia. And it is really interesting. It looks like kind of a mix of a mystery story and a love story, where the visual dynamic starts very black and white, and as you're kind of uncovering memories and stuff like that, you're adding color to the world and kind of going through her experiences and going through these memories that she's kind of resurfacing but losing grasp of and stuff like that. The visual aesthetic looks great. The conceit behind it, like all of the story stuff, looked really good, and it was really excellently voice acted from what they showed. So I think it comes out in just a few weeks. So
July 16th.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, so like 12 days. So that's definitely something I'm going to be checking out. Looks really good.
Yeah.
The next one was called Into a Dream, and it reminded me of The Missing in some ways. And it's like The Missing / Limbo or Inside. It's like a side scrolly kind of thing, where your character that is being portrayed is always in silhouette. So you're always just seeing them as like a shadow character, and it's a game that's directly about depression, like mental health and depression, where essentially you are playing as a psychologist. I think this is what it was. I don't recall exactly, but I think you're playing as a psychologist who falls asleep and ends up somehow connected via this mind tunnel to someone with depression and helping guide them through their life, basically through this
Brain
dream.
dancing.
Yeah, exactly. They're drifting, but it also looks really good. It looks the creator looks like he's talked directly about how he doesn't personally have depression, and he's in contact with a lot of people who have far more insight than he does to make sure that he's doing it right. He also says, yeah, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm talking with a lot of people to make sure this is done right, and it looks like it's coming from a very earnest place. So cool. Looks really good.
That's out July 31st, and there's a demo on Steam.
Yeah, so a lot of these are coming soon. A couple are coming in 2021. But the next one is one called Lost in Play. It looks fucking charming as hell. It's like this kind of point-and-click adventure thing with a really, really vibrant art style. But it seems creative and almost wacky in a way that reminded me of like Machinarium or Botanicula. I don't know if you guys ever played those, but like, I'm a big fan of Botanicula. Machinarium was pretty good, but Botanicula's just the way you would interact with things, and it would just do this stuff that you don't expect, which turns into mechanics, which turns into puzzle solving, is very much what this is like. But yeah, it looks like this very well animated, hand-drawn art style that looks kiddie, but at the same time, you're like looking at these crazy like werewolf creatures and like talking to forest sprites and stuff like that.
It looks like a Cartoon Network show.
Yeah, in a way. Like, it looks really high production value, especially for an indie game. And it looks really charming and really fun. So I think that one comes out in 2021.
Yes, mid-2021 it says on Steam.
Yeah, so that one, super looking forward to it. That's Lost in Play. Second to last one is one called Project Sky. Again, I think this is one you'll be really into, Pat. It's this solo developer. I can't recall his name, but he's from Canada, from Nova Scotia, I believe. And it's this really unique world with just an absolute fuck ton of lore. Like, basically, he talked about how he came up with this whole language, or not language, but this like tribal custom for one of the tribes that you can encounter, where they have certain symbols in certain colors and stuff on their garb, to where if you learn how to interpret it, you can basically read their entire life story, like from major events in their lives and stuff. Like,
that's really cool.
Yeah, like it's that kind of stuff. And it's like just this really unique lore. But the gameplay itself seems like a very Horizon Zero Dawn kind of feel, where you're like engaging in battles against like giant mechanical automatons and like going for the weaknesses and stuff. And you're riding on the back of this really pretty cool ass wolf and stuff like that. And you're encountering like I said, tribes, like, and these tribes will be kind of anthropomorphic animals or hooded creatures, or like, you know, like you don't know what you're going to run to. And it's just this enormous world that looks really fascinating.
That's awesome.
I believe he has a demo up that you can play right now, and he's accepting like direct feedback from that demo. So I think it's worth a shot. I have it installed. I'm going to be playing it after this. You can find that at projectskygame.com. So it's pretty cool. And then the last one is a game called Undying, which it has this really, really interesting story kind of conceit to it. The elevator pitch of it is that you're playing as a mother in a zombie apocalypse, but the mother has been bitten. So she is definitely going to turn. She is definitely going to die. And she's been traveling with her son. So knowing that she has limited time left, she's trying to teach him as much as possible with that time she has, as well as like bring him somewhere safe. Like it seems like it's actually telling a really interesting story in that space, which I'm super intrigued. Like I'll admit the trailer that they showed didn't blow me all the way to my butt. Just because I think it wasn't edited the strongest, but I think the gameplay looked really good. The concept sounds really good, and the story sounds like it could be really good if executed as well as they were showing. So, there was a lot of other games at IOX. It's worth watching the video. I think you can find it on the Indie Obscura YouTube channel. But those were just 5 of the highlights. It continues being a really excellent thing that I will continue to support. Especially, I don't know about y'all, but the Summer Game Fest kind of thing has kind of turned into a summer game mess of just...
That's a copyrighted term. We can't use that. We can't use that term.
Is it?
Unless you say Jeff
Grubb.
Grubb's Summer Game Mess.
Oh, I didn't realize Jeff Grubb is the one. I will not cross my sword with Jeff Grubb.
He is the official source for all summer games goings on.
Right, I forgot about that document.
I do not subscribe or reference Jeff Keighley's Summer Games
Fest
blank. I will not say it. Only Jeff Grubb's Summer Games Mess. It is a mess. All of it.
One B on that name.
That stuff has been impossible to follow.
We could probably get permission from Jeff Grubb. He's a really nice guy and super responsive on Twitter. So I played Eco with him last year.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's
Eco the
cool.
Dolphin.
He's kind of a dick when he plays Eco, but I mean, I think that's more RP than reality.
Yeah, that's... But yeah, I don't know. IOX, I feel pretty strongly about. I think it's good, but it's been hard to follow all the events that have been going on.
We've got this month is Xbox, right?
Yeah, in like a week or
July
two.
21st, I want to say.
Is it the 21st? Okay.
I thought it was. There's been some rumbling that seems like it's mid-July, but there's not been any official statement.
I thought I saw an official statement, but I could be wrong. Microsoft has announced a new event today called the Xbox Summer Game Fest that will bring 60 brand new demos of upcoming games to the Xbox dashboard starting on July 21st. So I guess the presentation might be earlier, but their demo festival thing starts.
Okay, yeah. So like they're like, here's our first party games thing that we're launching with the Xbox One and that kind of stuff. That's supposed to be mid-month. So it could be the 21st. I haven't seen
I
it.
don't know.
Like, here's when we're showing stuff, but then like Ubisoft is supposed to be this month too, right? Late this month. It's shenanigans.
What I think is interesting about this shit too is, and this isn't to pick on any of it at all, because they're all cool games that people should check out, but it sounds like this Xbox Summer Game Fest is largely going to be a lot of the same demos that were in the Steam thing, just for the games that are also coming to console. And it's great for people who don't have PCs to be able to play them on console, but it's also like, it's still not. I saw some responses to it like, this is so cool that we need more of this. And the answer is yes, but also it's kind of not like a new thing, like it's still demos that have been circulating for a bit.
But it's new for console gamers because a lot of people just aren't on console or aren't on PC.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is I saw in a lot of enthusiast press that this is like, that Microsoft is like blazing a trail or something. Not a lot of enthusiast press. I saw a few people saying that they're blazing it, and I would argue that is not the case, and that they're pulling down, they're soliciting demos that have been on PC for a bit, which is cool, and we do need more of it. But what I'm getting at is, it would be great if they could stream like a vertical slice of Halo or something like that. You know, like it's a lot to ask, but it would be neat.
Yeah, definitely. Jeff Grubb seems to be indicating Xbox Game Studios reveal July 23rd, but it says it's a reveal, so I feel like maybe that's the whole event, but I'm not sure.
I wonder if they're holding it until they can put a price up at the end of the thing, like they're trying to get Sony to go on price so that they can then at the end of their presentation undercut that price.
Maybe, but I just don't see Sony blinking. But
what does that mean? Like, if is it going to be September before we know how much these fucking things cost?
No, it means you're going to pre-order, and then at some point in November, you'll get a notification that your credit card has been charged
for $650,
and 2 days later you'll get a package.
It's like irresponsible at this point, the way that they're holding these prices, both of them. Like,
it's dumb.
Fucking come on.
But like, I don't know, things are weird, so I don't know. But
no, you're right.
I guess if they can drop 100 off the price, that if they can comfortably do that, but if they can do that, then maybe they should do it anyway.
And also,
I don't know.
Again, trust me, I'm in marketing, so I understand why this shit doesn't happen. But I think the reasons it doesn't happen are bullshit. To me, if I were Microsoft, if I were Phil Spencer, I would say, look, we want to make the price. We're talking about numbers like 400, we're talking about numbers like 450, and we're trying to do our best to bring the price to a certain point. And then you put a price out, and if Sony announces way lower, there's no legal reason why you can't say like, oh, we actually want to be less cost than the PlayStation 5, so we're in fact going to launch at this lower price. You can do that. There's nothing. The reason that you don't is because it's a marketing law that you don't do that kind of shit, like a unspoken, like just a thing, best practice. But there's no real reason why it has to be that way.
Yeah, it's I don't know. We got Ubisoft is coming up on the 12th, Devolver on the 11th, Google Stadia on the 14th. Happy birthday to me.
Cool.
There's gonna be Bandai Namco Play Anime Live on the 22nd.
There might be a Gundam game in there. That new Jewel on Gundam game sounds like it's pretty good.
Okay.
I don't like that tone.
The last ones have been bad.
They haven't been bad.
The previous, okay, maybe not. I don't know.
Not the Gundam versus games. Those have been pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like the Gundam versus, it sound like they haven't been great, but I don't know. I haven't played them. All right, that I think is going to do it for news. You ready to talk about games?
Jesus.
No. Let's we're gonna wrap up for this week. We'll come back next week and hopefully be able to talk about some games. I've been playing a lot of Hades.
We'll be talking about news next week too. I almost guarantee it.
Yeah, but
Trackmania, not bad.
Hey, it's needs more Star Wars Metallica, and also their fucking club access like pass stuff is fucking stupid.
What I would recommend you do, and I'm sorry that you didn't have a good experience with this, Andre. I'm not sorry. I'm not Ubisoft. They should be sorry.
They should. It is the worst.
What I recommend people do,
anything like this.
Install the free version of the game and then try to do the thing. Just play it until it tells you have to pay money. Do whatever you want to do. And then you're going to hit a screen eventually where it's like, hey, to access this feature, you need to pay us $10 or you need to pay us $30. And if at that point it's worth that to you, then go ahead and do it.
It's Trackmania. It's amazing. They deserve my money. But the problem is, so you need to pay. So this game is free. Free to start, as Nintendo would say.
Yes.
You can play like a bunch of single player stuff and fuck around. But if you want to play online, you got to pay like $10 a month at least.
Not a
You pay
month,
$10
year.
a month, and a year, $10 a year, and that lets you do something. Join public rooms, which are like public servers, but I don't know. It's not clear. So I tried to join some servers. Maybe they weren't public. Maybe that was my issue, but I thought they were, because I paid the $10 and I tried to join a server. It's like, nope, you need the club access. I'm like, why the fuck do I need the club access?
I don't know, because I had the free version.
And you went on the Giant Bomb server.
I went on the Giant Bomb server and it said you need to pay us $10, and then I did that, and now I can play on the Giant Bomb server.
I paid them $10, and it said you need to pay us $30 or like whatever the next tier is. And I went, excuse me, and I rebooted the game, and it did it again. And I was like, well, fuck this.
Maybe
I went to sleep, and then I got on this morning and I paid them their fucking money. And I played some Trackmania, but there was no Star Wars Metallica.
I don't know why you had to pay $30.
Also, well, I don't know either. And it's their fucking standard and club access. They do an awful, absolutely shit job of explaining them. Explaining the two differences.
No, the messaging is terrible. But the game
absolutely horseshit.
The game is good though.
The game is good, but their club and standard access thing, somebody needs to like slap those people and be like, "What are you doing?" Just make sense. Like I have no problem with them charging like $10 a year or like $30 a year, whatever it is the price is.
Sure.
But I do have a problem with having to pay $10 going, this isn't working, and then paying another $30 on top of that
to see if it'll work.
And then it did work. But I think maybe it added on like, so I've got like a year and 3 months of like the upper tier now, but.
Yeah. Either way, we can talk more about games next week. Maybe we'll talk about Hyperscape.
Maybe.
But
Hades, real good. People should play that. Like, holy shit.
Supergiant game?
Supergiant. Yeah. Oh my God. It's good.
Ark is also real good. You should find 5.
Nobody should play Ark. Don't do it. Don't do this to yourself.
Private server.
Don't fall down this rabbit hole.
Do it. It's fun.
Which will consume your life.
It's so much fun.
But I could just play Hades. Hades, babies.
Can you poop your pants in Hades?
Well, I mean, you die a lot, and usually when you die, you like evacuate your bowels. So I guess
we went and got birds last night, and I was flying my bird around, and I pooped while I was riding the bird way up in the air, and then the poop fell off, and it fell all the way to the ground. And if I had landed, I would have been able to find that poop.
That's going to do it for episode 128. Is that where we're at? Yeah, 128 of the Gaming Fix podcast on July 4th, 2020. I have been your host, Andre Cole, a.k.a. your partner's favorite way to beat Dark Souls. You can find me on Twitter at Coolslaw, COOLSL4W. Alex, where can people find you?
I don't know.
It's probably for the best. Pat, where can people find you?
When the T-Rex poops, it has to do a little like bounce squat down.
It teabags the poop?
Yeah, I guess. You can find me at PJC Plays and riding T-Rexes around while they poop.
You can find our podcast on Twitter at Fix Podcasts or on the internet at fix.space to get this podcast wherever fine podcasts can be listened to. And you can head to podchaser.com/gamingfix to leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, and help us improve.
Yeah. Thank you to those who have written reviews. It is appreciated.
Yes. And thank you to everyone who listens. I know many of you have much less podcasting time to listen to stuff. Less time to podcast, less time to listen to podcasts. I don't know. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back next week with another podcast. So long.
Goodbye.
Boy. So dumb.